Hi guys, so I just wanted to give you a quick update on where we're at with the Renters' Right Bill that's coming into play. So as hopefully all of you guys know, there's going to be a major piece of legislation that's coming in. This is likely to be coming in next summer. So this was an update, so a webinar that I just listened to this morning that's only a few days old. And this was basically, I'm going to give you a summary of what happened in the webinar, so you don't have to spend an hour watching it. Okay, so it was done by the guys at Rightmove, and it was their general counsel that's basically held the webinar. And this was done, like I said, a couple of days ago. So just to give you a quick overview on the agenda, let's just move my face out of the way. So first of all, some of you may not know exactly what the Renters' Right Bill is. You might have heard it called the Renters' Reform Bill, because it's basically changed names when they've changed governments. So we're going to go through basically an overview of what the Renters' Rights Bill is. Then we're going to quickly look at basically what was in the Renters' Reform Bill and what's now in the Renters' Right Bill, although essentially 90% of it, if not slightly more, is all the same. And then we're going to just look at increased security and more stability, so kind of that part of the market. Registers and redress schemes that you're going to need to be basically as a landlord members of, and then like the implementation, so basically the timescale. So hopefully my plan is to try and whiz through this in hopefully 10-15 minutes, so I'm going to hopefully save you 45-50 minutes. Okay, so first of all, overview. So overview of the bill. So the Renters' Right Bill, so this is basically exactly what they've said, the government, okay? It's in the explanatory notes in the 226 pages of the bill so far. So unless you want to read 226 pages, I'm basically going to tell you exactly what you need to know about it. So the Renters' Rights Bill delivers the government's manifesto commitment to transform the experience of private renting, including by abolishing Section 21 evictions and introducing a robust, decent home standard in the sector for the first time. Objective of the bill is to ensure private renters not only have the access to a secure and decent home, but they can exercise their rights to challenge poor treatment and bad practice. Landlords should retain the confidence to repossess their properties where they have good reason to, but with suitable safeguards for tenants who may lose their home. So look guys, basically most of you should know that Section 21, basically it means, can I give I want to get my property back and I don't need to give a reason. That's what it's called, no fault eviction. So they're removing that, which is obviously a concern for all of you and for any landlord. However, it's not all bad news, I promise you, and I'll talk more about that. And then introducing a robust, decent home standard. So basically, making sure they've actually got a standard that landlords need to adhere to for providing accommodation, but also making enforcement basically for the local councils, the local authorities to actually clamp down on basically bad landlords. The great thing is there are no bad landlords that we help at Portfolio, and I help, and the reason for that is because we just won't work with landlords that don't want to give a decent accommodation. So none of this is for you to worry about, and I'm going to tell you at the end of this video the number one thing that basically we or you, if you're doing this privately yourself, need to make sure that you do. Okay? So it's just really important. Okay? So, Renters' Reform Bill 2023, what was it? So basically, I'm just going to really whiz through this. So basically, abolish Section 21, which we talked about. They're going to reform the grounds, so for landlords, so regain possession when necessary, because obviously there's got to be some reasons that you can have your property back. They can't just stay in there forever. They're going to target areas unacceptable delays in court proceedings, because as we know, the court is a joke at the moment and it's taking so long to do anything to get people out. So they're looking at seeing how they can do that. Take everything with a pinch of salt. And then rent increases only allowed once per year. Okay, and they're going to end the use of rent review clauses. So some of you guys I know have tried to use, or we have used particular clauses in contracts, like basically linked to inflation, or rent goes up 2.5% a year or 5% a year. So you're not going to be able to do that anymore once this comes in. And also they're going to give tenants the ability to challenge basically excessive rent increases. Okay, so all of that. Positive rent experience, so make it illegal for landlord agents to have blanket bans on rent to families. So basically this is all around discrimination for families with children on those and benefits. Basically, pretty much I don't know any of our landlords that accept people on benefits. So that is going to be something that we're going to need to think about, and how we essentially still make sure that we get you the best possible tenant for the property without discriminating. So it's going to give tenants to request pets in their property. So this is a big one. Basically you can't refuse if someone's got pets, and even if you've got a block, your property's part of a block, it might have in the head lease basically no pets, not going to be allowed to do it anymore. But they are basically going to be forced to have, you're going to be able to force them to have insurance, whether they pay for that through the rent or you pay for that yourself. Obviously we talked about decent home standard, accelerate quality improvements in the areas that need it most. And then compliance enforcement, introduce a new ombudsman, that basically all landlords need to be part of. Introduce a new property portal, that's not happening anymore. Strengthen local council's enforcement powers and ability to crack down on criminal landlords. Right, so that's basically what it was, and basically this is what it is now. So a lot of it is the same. So I'm going to tell you what is the same, I'm going to just highlight what is different. Abolish Section 21, that's all still happening. There's no amount of lobbying that basically is going to reverse this. That is happening, 1,000,000%. Empower tenants to challenge rent increase designs to force them out by the back door. Because obviously one of the reasons that people may choose to get tenants out is I'm just going to jack the rent up. You're not going to be able to do that anymore. Okay, they're not completely stupid, the government. They are going to block things where they know that people will circumnavigate it. Strengthen tenants' rights protections, challenge punitive practices such as unreasonable rent rises and rental bidding. So rental bidding is one that's interesting. Look, basically, none of our landlords, we try and get market level. And usually we end up negotiating slightly below market level if they've been really good tenants, which is usually a pretty clever thing to do, a smart thing to do, because the value of a good tenant is worth more than an extra 25 quid a month. I think all of you would probably agree with that. But what they're going to do is when a property comes on the market, it's not something really, a tactic that we've, to be honest, ever used. But it's something that probably a lot of agents have used, especially in kind of cities where the demand is crazy for property, that they're basically just saying, put the best offer in, whoever bids the most money gets the property. And what happens is you get it's just such a terrible way of doing stuff, because basically you get a really vulnerable person that's willing to pay loads for the property, and you just get way above market rent, but basically it's just a massive risk, so it's stupid anyway. So we're not going to have that worry. And they're going to expand the possession grounds. So basically they're going to expand different reasons for you to get your property back. Okay, there's loads of detail in this. I've read the whole report. We'll probably look to do a webinar on this and give loads more detail, or do some sort of digital download. But ultimately you're paying us to know this stuff anyway, but it's good for you to understand it, especially for self-managing as well. Positive rental experience, so make it legal for landlords to discriminate against tenants, so that's obviously something that's still the same. Receipts, benefits, or with children, so it's really going to need to be probably a mindset change for some of you, that we're not going to be able to discriminate against people with children or on benefits. But also, look, we are going to get the best tenant for the property. Now, the best tenant may be someone on benefits, it may be someone with children, it may not be. But ultimately, whatever happens, my belief is that we need to find the very best tenant for the property. So without discriminating. So that is the most important thing. Okay? Because that's going to basically create the most profit for you by having the best person, which I can talk to more about at the end. Giving tenants the right to request obviously a pet hasn't changed. So like I said before, key thing is you're going to be able to charge basically the tenants the insurance cost of insuring the property, because they've had to get a pet. Obviously, there's not enough detail on what pet you're allowed, what pets you're not allowed, in terms of is there certain pets that are excluded. There'll be more detail in that as this goes through to law. And then basically the decent home standard and a WAB's law to the sector. So a WAB's law is basically a very sad story about a young child that died in a property, in a social housing property, basically. From pretty much mould, and the social housing sector has to abide by this OAB's law, and they're basically going to apply it to now all property, basically. So it's going to be something, once again, this isn't for us to worry about. If we just provide good quality accommodation, then we don't need to worry about it. Okay, so we just really need to think about that. Okay, compliance enforcement, introducing new ombudsman service. So this is a killer for landlords. And I'm a landlord myself as well. Basically, there's going to be a cost to it. So ultimately, you're going to need to register with an ombudsman service. Okay, there's going to be a digital database for all private landlords, and basically you're going to have like a record on there. So obviously, if one was not a great landlord and had done things wrong, it's going to be on your record. So it's, if you're a great landlord, it's going to be a positive thing, isn't it? So but it's probably well needed in the industry, and all of this is really just to professionalise the whole kind of landlord industry. So yeah, interesting. Expand financial penalties for councils. So this is one, with the extra money that they're going to generate from this stuff, what they're basically implying is that they're going to give the councils more resources to effectively fine people. Okay, the fines are going to be pretty horrendous. So it's 7,000 for most penalties, and it goes up to huge rent repayment orders up to 2 years. So if you're average £1,000 a month, you could be facing a 24 grand fine if you do something really bad. But once again, luckily we're here to protect you from not doing anything really bad. But for the landlords that do stuff bad, this is going to be a real bad problem for them. They're going to create new investigatory powers to identify and fine criminal landlords. They're going to have lots of jurisdiction basically to go into rental properties that aren't supposed to be rental properties without warrants. They're going to be able to go into agents, take all their data. So basically they're going to have so much power to actually get information and basically find these rogue landlords. So like I said about significant rent repayment orders. So about improved security and stability, this is obviously the big one. So Section 21 evictions have led tenants to feel reluctant to challenge poor standards due to the risk of eviction without reason. So basically what they're saying, and it says here, short notice moves which can occur because of Section 21 have negative effects on outcomes and reduced investments in local communities. So basically what they're saying is that because we can, anyone in this industry, letting agent or landlord, can give a Section 21 no fault, it makes tenants feel unsettled, and therefore they won't be prepared to stay in communities because they feel sort of uncertain, basically, which does kind of make sense. But the reality is there's usually a reason why you're given a Section 21. So they're trying to find ways to make people feel more certainty in areas so they stay in those communities. And obviously they're... what's the right word? So they're basically just helping the local economy in the area by staying there, working there, spending money in the shops, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So, what it means to you. So, ending no-fault evictions. So, they're going to abolish Section 21 evictions. There's going to be a single system of periodic assured tenancies. So, at the moment, most of you will probably understand, we have what's called an assured short hold tenancy system. Okay, so short hold tenancy system. So basically we do contracts 6 or 12 months, can do longer, but that's how it works at the moment. Basically, once this law comes into place, it's going to be month to month. Okay, that's what periodic means, month to month tenancies. Rent can be charged monthly or for each 28 days. Okay, tenants need to give 2 months notice. All right, 2 months notice here. Okay, and written tenancy agreements need to be made mandatory, and regulations may specify required terms of word and tenancy agreements. So probably have one legal tenancy agreement that has to be used over and over again. That's basically by the government. Okay, but it's some they're massive changes. Let's be honest. These are huge changes, and where there's change, there's going to be pain, but there's also going to be massive amounts of opportunity. Okay. So, I am an optimist, so we're going to look at the opportunity, but we're also not going to be blind to the things that we need to be mindful of, basically. And PBSA is basically purpose-built student accommodation. So if you're a Bournemouth landlord, basically it's all of those big tower blocks that you can see in Bournemouth that are for students. So they're exempt because they basically work off licenses, not tenancy agreements. So they've got around it. Also, if I was, looking into this, I would say maybe they're exempt because they're big corporations that maybe lobby. So, who knows? But Just saying. Okay, but they're exempt. Challenging rent increases. So only once per year. Okay, so if we were doing 6 month tenancies, we could potentially review the rent and increase it every 6 months. But basically, we're only allowed to do it once a year. Okay, so effectively, we're going to have these rolling periodic contracts. Your agent or us as your agent, basically, we're going to have like a milestone, which is a yearly milestone, which will review the rent. I think what's going to happen, and I'm pretty confident of this, is actually this is going to hurt tenants more. Okay, because where people didn't put the rent up every year, and a lot of you that I know, are really fair with tenants, and you don't put the rent up all the time. Sometimes you leave it 3-4 years, and then we say to you, look, the rent's a lot more. But I think all of these kind of things, these extra costs, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have to pass those costs on. Otherwise, for some of you, it's just not going to make any sense. And only market levels. So we'll most likely, as your agent, or if you do this yourself, you're going to need to provide evidence. And the thing that you need to think about is, if I was taken to court over this potential rent increase, which you can do, which I'll move on to in a minute, how would I prove that? So for us, we would provide a comparables report. Okay, that actually makes sense. So we knew if we got taken to court, we would go, here's the evidence, here's the communication trails, this is why we know that this is the market level, and we would basically be watertight. You need to be watertight if you're doing this yourself. Notice periods to increase from 1 to 2 months. So instead of giving 1 month's notice for an increase, we need to give 2. So basically if we're renewing it every year, we'll do it at basically month 10 to renew, obviously, in a year's time. Tenancy terms which allow rent increases outside of statutory mechanism to be illegal. So remember about scheduling in rent increases, can't do that anymore. That's obviously something we talked about. Tenants can appeal above market rent increases to a first tier tribunal. So basically, if you try and blag it and you're trying to get more than what you can prove, then basically they could take it to a tribunal, and there'll be a holding period for you to be able to do that. So, I think it's a 2-month holding period. So you just got to be aware of that, that position. Banning rental bidding. So this is really new. So like I said, inviting or encouraging or accepting a higher rent when letting a property. So will be landlords or agents be required to publish an asking rent for their property. They will then be prohibited from accepting offers above this price. You can get fined loads of money. So if someone goes and your renting is $1,200 and someone goes, I'll give you $1,600 and you take it, don't do it. You're going to get fined loads of money if you get found out. And I wouldn't be surprised if they had people doing this, the councils, if they had people basically mystery shopping to try and catch private landlords out, because it's an easy win, isn't it? Pretend to be a tenant, I'll give you $1,300 instead of $1,200, and then all of a sudden you get a $7,000 fine, or even worse. So got to be really careful. So just got to do everything right. What this means to you, so notices. So this is really important, some of this stuff, because this is the big changes, and this is, it's quite a painful part, to be perfectly honest with you. So notices, 4 months notice when not tenant's fault, and it was 2 months notice before. So think about it. You need to give 4 months notice now to get your property back. Okay, not 2 months, so that's double, 100%. Yeah, many of the 14-day notice periods have been extended to 4 weeks or 2 months. Okay, so once again, this is a big increase on the notice period. So yeah, it's a big change there. Rental arrears extended to 4 weeks. So before it was 2 weeks, potentially to get them out on Section 8, so now it's 4 weeks. This is good. No notice for antisocial behaviour grounds. So we have to obviously rely on the courts, which takes time. But we can get people, if someone's being antisocial, if they could be evicted on the antisocial behaviour grounds, then we can get them out pretty quickly. There's going to be several specific new grounds, which is important to note, but more devil in the detail again. Deregulation Act requirements no longer required except tenancy deposit protection. So basically, we don't need to show them now because it's a assured tenancy. We don't need to give people EP. We still need to do them as landlords, but we don't need to provide EPCs and lots of basically paperwork before they move in. Rent arrears grounds, so discretionary grounds 10-11 largely unchanged but extended to 4 weeks notice, as we touched on. So this is important, so it's just extra time that you don't get rent. So this is a bit of a tricky one. No new ground for repeated rent arrears. Mandatory ground 8 now requires 3 months arrears. So this is, not great as a landlord. Whereas before it was 2 months arrears. So basically you can get the tenants out if they're 2 months arrears. You can get them out really quickly in 14 days. You can apply for the court within 14 days. But, they've now moved it to 3 months arrears. So that's an extra month. So that could be quite costly. So that's not great. New ground, so selling and moving in ground. So new ground for 1A for selling property. Moving in ground extended to close family members. Can't be used in the first 12 months, up from 6 months. So if you want to sell your property, you can't do it in the first 12 months for tenancy. So, this could be troublesome. This is where you're just going to need to be kind of like really certain that you're in this for the at least like short-ish term, which is not less than a year. Because, the reality is, if you decide you want to sell your property after 6 months, you're not going to be able to. If you just give them a new tenancy, you'll have to wait up to 12 months. And there's loads of fines for doing this. 4 months notice period for landlord. And then 7,000 penalty for marketing within the restricted periods, 12 months from the date of possession order. So basically, if you give someone notice to sell the property, and then you can't sell the property, and you put it back on for let, you can't do it for 12 months after you've got them out. So you need to be sure that you can sell the property, or whoever you're using to sell the property can sell the property. Okay, so definitely something to think about. This is around the positive rental experience. So, private rental sector has a higher proportion of properties that do not meet standards than other housing tenants. Private rented homes containing these hazards are estimated to cost the NHS 340 million annually. Poor quality housing costs alternatives, costing society 18.6 billion every year. So you can see the narrative there. So a ban on blanket ban. So the bill makes it unlawful for landlords and agents to discriminate. To basically discriminate against tenants with children or receive benefits. Some agents, I don't know why they think they can still do it, but you can't put no DSS in the adverts. You can't do that. Any indirect actions such as requiring high deposits or rent in advance would not be applied to tenants without children on receipt. And then renting with pets, we've already touched on this, but basically you have to allow people to have pets. But they have to take out an insurance, or you can charge them back for it. Okay, it's not clear how many pets. Is it 10 pets, or is it 1 pet? Is it a type of pet that's not allowed? There's things like dangerous dogs, that are banned. So we need to figure out. We need to wait for the exact detail once it's passed through law. But it's definitely something that's going to be a big change. And we've already touched on the decent home standard. And obviously Awab's law as well, which of course is a good thing. We don't want anyone passing away in properties, especially children. It's very sad, and it doesn't need to happen. Compliance and enforcement. So this is where we're at with the compliance and enforcement. So basically, they're really going to try and clamp down. That's the narrative of this. Is they're really going to give the local authorities the power to clamp down on these rogue landlords and on landlords that don't meet these requirements. So, like I said, power to create one or more redress schemes. Schemes going to charge fees. That's going to be on a new fee that's going to be charged to you. Covers all landlords, irrespective of whether they're using an agent or not. So, obviously, if you just use agents' tenant fines, or you just privately manage the stuff yourself, need to make sure that you are part of this scheme. It's going to allow for complaints from current and former tenants. So, this is something to think about. You can't market a property until you're registered or you get fined, and only applies to Assured and Rent Act tenancies. So we're going to have a private rented sector database that we've already touched on. So all landlords must register themselves on their properties, fees to join. So there's going to be more fees. So you've got the redress scheme and a database. Not allowed to market properties, public register. It's going to have details of banning orders, and it's only going to apply, as we said before, to the Assured and Rent Act tenancies. Penalties. This is where the fines are coming in. So £7,000 basically for a fixed penalty notice for first offence, 40 grand for a fixed penalty notice for second and subsequent offences. So it's pretty heavy. I mean, it's very heavy. or prosecution and unlimited fine. Rent repayment orders for up to 2 years rent, which I touched on before, and block on possession orders. So basically, if you haven't done things correctly, or you've been, you haven't, you basically got yourself in trouble, or you haven't done something right, you're not going to be able to get in and out of a property. So that's really important. There's going to be a lead enforcement authority, so the power to appoint a lead enforcement authority, provide guidance, information, and advice to local councils how to enforce. It's going to give them power to enforce. So basically, like say if it's a complex or quite a big issue, basically they're going to give a higher authority the power to deal with this if local authorities can't. And it says strengthened investigatory powers to seek information. So we talked to this already. I just touched on it. Basically, they'll be able to go in without warrants to properties, companies, if they believe that they're basically not doing the right thing. Implementation. So this is basically our timeline, guys. So at the moment, commencement will be by ministerial order once the bill is passed. Unlikely to be a transition period and backstop date as proposed in the Renters Reform Bill. Big one, okay? Before, we had a backstop. So it was like, this will be law by X, but you have 18 months. So for all old tenancies, unless they renew, you won't have to do the new legislation. Or before this date. Now it's basically, this is what happened in Wales. By this date, you have to be ready. You have to have done everything. Okay? So there's going to be some scrambling probably. So very important to take note of. Passage of bill. So second reading tomorrow, 9th of October. So yeah, this came out on the 8th of October. So we're 4 or 5 days behind that. Committee stage done by Xmas. So this is what the Housing Minister wants. Committee stage done by Xmas. On to report. Third reading. House of Lords early next year. Housing Minister wants it enforced by summer 2025. So we haven't got that long. Okay, we have not got that long to start really making sure that we think about this, and we're putting in guardrails in place to make sure that we are compliant and that you know what your risks are now with these assets, or you know what the opportunities are, which I talked about earlier. So my kind of takeaway, guys, on everything is this is basically a move by the government to professionalise the industry. They don't like it that there are millions of private landlords with 1 or 2 properties. Okay, it's hard for them to control, and you know, like with everything, there's bad actors. Okay, and this is getting a lot of public support, 'cause obviously there are a lot of people that rent, that vote, and it's really just a major shift in the industry and a professionalisation of the industry. So although as a landlord, I'm not over the moon and supportive about everything, I do believe this is an opportunity, because ultimately there'll be a number of landlords that don't want to professionalise, and they don't want to provide a high quality product to a high quality tenant, or they just don't like the risks. So there is going to be opportunities. An obvious opportunity is the supply is going to be cut, of course, because every landlord that maybe sells a property isn't going to be replaced by a landlord that wants to buy it and keep renting it. So clearly, if supply keeps getting cut and demand's increasing, which I can tell you now, and I could do more stuff on the data, but basically demand is rising, supply is being stripped. So what's that doing? Guess what? Rent's getting higher. Okay, now we've had a bit of a blip on rents in the last 6 months, where they stagnated a little bit because they just hit a ceiling. Summer last year, it just got crazy. The rents were just out of control. So they have stagnated slightly, or even decreased in some cases, but they're still very high, and that trend's going to continue as the government penalises us and more landlords and effectively strips the supply. So there's an opportunity there in terms of, guess what, the rents are going to continue to rise. So the main thing is getting a good quality product, okay, or having a good quality product. And I know that's difficult as well when you're just not potentially as profitable as you were before. So I get there are challenges around that. So that's something that we need to think about and explore, and I'll talk further about, and hopefully do more presentations. I will do more presentations about, because I think it's incredibly important now, is this massive shift between kind of the haves and the have-nots, to be honest with you, and between the people who've just been doing it probably unprofessionally and the people that want to take it really seriously and do it really professionally, create a great product and charge for that product. You will be rewarded in the marketplace. They're not putting in rent controls. They're not doing that. It is clear. You can charge market rent. So if you're providing a high quality product, yeah, and getting a good quality tenant who appreciates and values is the strong word, that product, they're going to pay top money for that. Okay? So there is a massive opportunity here, but I appreciate there are lots of other things that aren't potentially opportunities and we need to be mindful of. So my one key takeaway, I suppose the number one key two key takeaways basically before I wrap up. One, need to be prepared. So keep watching my videos and I'll keep giving you more information and updates. And number two, this all comes back to provide a good quality product, get a great tenant, which we obviously can help you with, and you'll be absolutely fine. Okay, let's be smart about can we structure our portfolio differently? Is it in our past names? Are we looking at corporations, LLPs, different things? We need to be exploring all ways of maximizing profitability if you want to stay in property, if you want to continue renting property, because the squeeze is on from the government clearly, but there are mechanisms and ways we can extract more profitability. Okay, so that's it. Hope you guys found this useful, and send me an email back, let me know what you thought. I'm considering doing some webinars about this, so let me know if you'd like to jump on a webinar. And just give me some feedback. Is there anything else you want me to run through that's going to help you be a better landlord and make money? Cheers, guys. Take care.